If she wanted you dead, I would not spare you. You live by her grace. When you meet her at moonrise, she will show you her design and your part in it.
Hi guys, Harbs and Narbs here. Welcome to part 2 of 3 of my video on whether the companions are chosen ones. This video, like the last one, will be talking about plenty of strange theories accompanied by DATAMINED content, so please don't watch if you'd rather avoid all that. If you haven't seen part 1, then I'd highly recommend you have a watch of it, as it will give plenty of context to this video, in which I'm going to be talking in further detail about why the Cult of the Absolute wanted the companions to become true souls. I'll also be elaborating slightly more on the route that the Nautiloid may have taken. The theories in this video could still hold up even if the companions were taken at random. I still believe that only certain individuals are given the opportunity to become true souls, and I suppose if the companions did truly arrive on the Nautiloid in a complete unlucky twist of fate, then they could have been designated to become true souls after having been picked up. Before we get started, I'd just like to say a big thank you to a new patron called Daniel. Cheers for signing up and welcome to the Patreon. Also, just a big thank you in general to everyone on the Patreon and all of my subscribers who engage and watch all of my videos. I haven't been able to upload as frequently of late, but I'm trying to make my content as unique and interesting as possible, whilst still being backed up by some modicum of sense. So the videos often take a little while to get together. Anyway, I appreciate all of your continued support. Okay, let's go. So the first companion I want to talk about is Karlach, who has been datamined as a confirmed companion, with Chublot being the one to reveal her rather striking appearance. Karlach tells us the following.
I boarded in Avernus. That ship was my way out.
So she willingly boarded the Nautiloid during this, and somehow got implanted by a tadpole in that time, meaning she potentially rocked up with all of the Cambions and imps and then immediately got captured, put in a pod and had a tadpole shoved in her eye. This woman, the Demon's Bane and Zariel's champion. I've theorized before why the characters are level 1, and regarding Karlach, it's because she's out of the Hells and no longer imbued with Zariel's power. She is significantly weaker. She even tells us this herself. However, if she boarded the Nautiloid in Avernus, she would surely be at full strength. With the Nautiloid already ripped apart and the Illithids and their thralls battling to defend it, were they really so desperate to carry on forcefully implanting people? Well, perhaps they were, if they are in the 9 Hells specifically to get Karlach, following a route to get people that could be useful as true souls. Remember, Karlach said she boarded it. This makes out like she wasn't picked up and teleported into a pod. What if Karlach was willingly implanted? It isn't clear yet where on the ship she will be when we've escaped our pod. Given that Shadowheart already has a hellish Githyanki artifact, which likely has links to Avernus, could it be possible that the Nautiloid already went to Hell once before? Yes, this is a weird one. So, it went there once, robbed the Githyanki artifact, that's when Karlach boarded. She then got implanted, possibly against her will if the ship was at full strength, and maybe instead of Shadowheart's mission, that's the reason for the dead mind flayers, as Karlach likely put up a fight. The ship then went on to capture other people, and that's when Shadowheart boarded to steal the artifact. I said this in the last video, but it is important to remember that the Githyanki are chasing the Nautiloid. They aren't chasing Shadowheart, so the artifact was likely already on the ship rather than on Shadowheart's person. The idea that the Nautiloid had already been to Hell once before would mean that if we play Karlach as an origin character, we will still be able to have the same cutscene of waking up upon a Nautiloid as it passes through Yartar. However, if she boarded the Nautiloid as the Demon's Bane when it was all beat up, ripped apart with other invading infernal forces, then surely they'd have to change this scene. If we don't go with this idea and we accept that the Nautiloid desperately passed into Avernus while it was already horrendously damaged, then did it have the specific intention to get Karlach? Was this something that was arranged, or was it as opportunistic as Karlach makes out? For one who just randomly boarded a Nautiloid, she is remarkably unconcerned about removing the tadpole. But then again, much like Astarion, Karlach is capable of envisioning some benefits of what happened to her, as it has helped her in escaping from her former master.
And what is it doing to me exactly? Barely felt a wriggle from it until you came along. Doesn't seem to have turned you into a mind flayer, unless you've tucked your tentacles down your throat. I'll start worrying when it gives me reason to.
I don't think she's evil or that she wished in any way to assist the cult of the Absolute, but she wanted out of hell and seems rather unafraid of the potential side effects that could come with having the tadpole, being more focused with hunting down a group of politicians in Baldur's Gate.
Politicians. The fuckers who sent me to hell in the first place. My advice? Stay away from the city. When I catch up with them, the streets will run red.
With regards to why the Absolute might have wanted Karlach as a true soul, it could be that she is Zariel's champion. We can already see other hellish storylines with Raphael, Cazador, Mizora, a Cambion and patron to Will that is linked to the Hells and has a powerful father who I've theorized as being Levistus. And in Jim Zub's comics, which are a prequel to Baldur's Gate 3, we can observe a storyline forming with Crydal, who has made a deal with a servant of Bel, Zariel's rival in Avernus. Not to mention that in Larian's own press release, it says the fate of the Forgotten Realms is on your party's shoulders. Will you carry it to salvation or descend with it to hell? If Karlach had been made into a true soul, would she have been sent back to Avernus as an agent of the Absolute? Does this fit in with the Absolute wanting to spread itself to other worlds and planes? Much like Karlach, Astarion has been able to escape from an oppressive master, and the tadpole has given him this freedom. He has retained his abilities as a vampire, but is able to walk in the sunlight and enter houses uninvited. If you haven't seen my friend or foe video on Cazador, then I have linked it down below, but basically there are lines that indicate that Astarion's old master will be going up against the Absolute, and he could prove to be a thorn in their side. A bit like when Minthara tells us that she would have us by her side in Menzoberranzan, implying a destiny greater than just ruling over goblins, it could be possible that Astarion also has a greater destiny. In fact, Minthara literally says this to Astarion.
You will never be a slave again, Daywalker. And your coven's shadow will cover the world.
In another one of Larian's press releases, it says dark powers are awakening inside you, drawn from a mind flayer parasite planted in your mind. Resist and turn evil against itself, or embrace corruption and lay claim to the Forgotten Realms. This embracing of corruption is something I could definitely see Astarion canonically doing, unless he is persuaded otherwise in-game. Was he destined to replace Cazador and gain control of the graveyard for the Absolute? Well, maybe he wasn't destined to do that. I think that the Absolute might have wanted a vampire spawn associated with Cazador as a true soul, and therefore Astarion was taken. This is a way into Cazador's coven, an undoubtedly powerful force in the area of Baldur's Gate. In previous videos, I've demonstrated with some of the DATAMINED lines that the Absolute are very interested in the graveyard just outside of the city. The problem is that this is Cazador's turf, and it is this that causes him to go against the Absolute. But if Astarion had completed the process at Moonrise Towers and became the new vampire lord of the Coven, this wouldn't have been a problem for the cult. And this also reflects what Minthara says to Astarion specifically. If the cult isn't that interested in the graveyard, then perhaps it has more to do with Cazador's infernal pact. We know that he carves poems written in infernal on the backs of his spawns, but is this because he has made some kind of deal with the devil? Does it somehow fit in with the other infernal happenings within the game? Astarion has likely benefited from the tadpole more than the other companions because of some of the classic vampiric weaknesses that are no longer present, such as being able to enter dwellings uninvited and being resistant to light. This could be because the cult of the Absolute wants to create an undead army. Just look at this line here, which directly links up the dead to the Illithid's grand design. Know that there are many who serve the Absolute even in death, waiting for the day when the grand design will come into play. They will be your allies, but make sure to identify yourself clearly to the skeletons, or they might mistake you for enemies. And then this line. There was a surge of pain in my head as the tadpole stood its ground against the holy light. I'm not sure who is using holy light against the tadpole, but given that we can see skeletons with tadpoles in their heads, it might be that the tadpoles have been given extra resistances to make the undead stronger, and therefore in turn it has also helped Astarion. As I said in Karlach's section, there seems to be some kind of overarching infernal plot, and in patch 6 we can come across Merregons in Grimforge who are led there by a mysterious infernal commander. And with Astarion's poem on his back, has Cazador made a contract with the devil? Is the reason the Absolute wants a true soul vampire leading his coven less to do with control over the graveyard and more to do with this infernal deal that could be rendered useless with Cazador dead and a new vampire lord in charge? Much like Draw and Gut were potentially implanted to bring the goblins to heel, did the cult also want to bring the vampires in Baldur's Gate under their control too? So I said in the previous video that I don't really know where or when Gale got picked up, but a safe bet could be Waterdeep, or at least somewhere nearby. I've previously made a video on Gale's Netherese destruction orb which he hosts inside his body, and which requires magical items in order to sate its destructive power. Gale doesn't go into the specifics of how he came across the book which cursed him with the Netherese orb, but he simply tells us that Waterdeep is a city filled with obscure arcana. Not a satisfying answer, and he likely acquired the book through more nefarious or secretive means. But why did the cult of the Absolute want Gale to become a true soul? Well, I can think of two possible reasons. Number one, for his extensive knowledge of Netherese history and magic which could serve the Absolute. And number two, the fact that he is a living bomb and has a Netherese orb in his chest. We know that the Absolute eventually wants to invade Baldur's Gate, and I can't think of a weapon more devastating than a true soul wizard with a bomb in his chest willing to die for the Absolute. But would he have been taken without this Netherese orb? Possibly. He was a prodigy and a wizard of great renown before his breakup with Mystra, but it's the Netherese orb in his chest that I think could be the thing that is truly sought by the Absolute. Given that one of Gale's desires in the Mirror of Ilin Toth is to become a living Mythal in his own right, this may well also be what the Absolute had planned for him. Mythals were immensely powerful effects that could alter the weave and provide powerful protective benefits to a city. For example, Silvery Moon has a Mythal that prevents evil dragons from entering it, and the ancient city of Myth-Glarak had a Mythal that protected it from fiends that had eaten the flesh of humans, elves or dwarves. If the Netherese orb could be safely extracted and correctly used for something other than destruction, it could still serve the Absolute in a big way. Not only that, but given that the tadpoles have been enchanted with Netherese shadow magic, surely it would be a huge coincidence that the Nautiloid randomly picked up a former powerful wizard with a Netherese artifact inside of him. To elaborate on some of this coincidence, we need to look at the fact that Gale tried to return a fragment of the weave that was stolen by Karsus to Mystra. He failed in this endeavour, hence why he is now a ticking bomb. And Karsus and his relationship with the Netherese and Netherese shadow magic could have something to do with the overarching plot. And to be honest, I don't have the answers to these questions that I'm about to put forth. The whole Karsus thing is very interesting, given that it was Karsus who many aeons ago before his folly gave sanctuary to an outcast Netherese wizard called Telemont Tantul, who was then known simply as Shadow. Telemont was the first Netherese to find the Shadowfell, which upon discovery was initially called the Demiplane of Shadow. Many arch-wizards of Netheril wanted Telemont dead, and so he faked his death and fled to the newly discovered Demiplane of Shadow with the assistance of Karsus, who according to Netheril Empire of Magic also performed Telemont's wedding ceremony with his would-be assassin turned lover. Anyway, at the start of this book there are a bunch of spells listed which shows which year they were created. This is all during the years in which Karsus and Telemont were actively researching the Shadowfell. There is no Netherese shadow magic before this. Telemont created Netherese shadow magic. This period was also known as the Shadowed Age in Netheril's history, probably for good reason given all those shadow-related discoveries. We know that our tadpoles have been enchanted with Netherese shadow magic, and we know that Dead 3 clerics are the cause of this. So they're using a type of magic that was originally first established by Telemont, who was a friend of and safely harboured by Karsus. One of Ed Greenwood's relatively recent books, called The Herald, details a sinister plot by Telemont Tanthul, who returned to Faerun in his city of Tultantar in 1372 DR. The book is set over a century after this return in 1487 DR, which is 5 years prior to Baldur's Gate 3. Telamont plans to make Shar the new goddess of magic, but he fails in this endeavour largely in part to an evil lich called Karlach and the famous wizard Elminster, who was the one to kill Telamont. The book states that Telamont needed to seize and drain the Mythal of Myth Drannor and the mighty wards of Candlekeep in order to help Shar become the new goddess of magic. Obviously, Telamont never achieved either of these things, and when his floating city of Tultantar fell from the sky, it collided with the ancient city of Myth Drannor, obliterating both cities. Ed Greenwood then wrote an article called After the Fall, which covered the events that took place after the book. The start of the article goes as follows. 3 ambitious heirs to the rule of Tultantar, a city that no longer exists, though there are other surviving Netherese cities that could be taken over, and plenty of newer, non-Netherese cities that could be conquered, for that matter, survive and are working together. Now calling themselves the Three, these young and ambitious Shadowvar seek to gather together surviving Tultantans under their command, the 2 women claiming their right to rule by blood inheritance, and Gwelt claiming to be carrying out the orders of the most high authority Telamont expressly gave to him in asserting his right to command. In Baldur's Gate 3, we can also find a book that tells us the following. Elminster said Naloth was a wonder to behold when it floated in Faerun's sky. He was surely right. This Netherese enclave was once a jewel in the Empire of Magic, with towers that pierced the heavens, and yet it fell, just as all Netherese enclaves did, crashing down when Karsus' folly ripped magic from the world. But even after it collapsed into the sea, its ruins still hold a strange, twisted beauty. I travelled here from Halrua when I heard the sea had retreated and the ruins of Naloth were visible once again. Alas, I was not the first. Looters have stripped the enclave of its material wealth, destroying much of its esoteric riches in the process. I've found arcane books used to make campfires, their magic lost now to the ages. I have met some Shadowvar here whose interests align with mine, and we have agreed to search the ruins together. I'm grateful for these allies. The ruins are mostly filled with thick-skulled adventurers, but I cannot shake the feeling that someone is watching us, waiting to see what we uncover. Obviously, Naloth is a different city to Tultantar, and this actually roughly refers to something already mentioned in 4th edition's The Forgotten Realms campaign guide, which is set in the realm year of 1479 DR, 8 years before the events of the Herald. What's different about this book is that it talks of someone from Halrua working with the Shadowfar to search the ruins together, but someone is watching them, waiting to see what they uncover. Why was this mentioned in the book? Were the Dead Three priests watching them? Or the Dead Three themselves? If the priests are not adept in shadow magic, is it possible that some of the survivors of Tultantar, as mentioned in Ed Greenwood's article After the Fall, are assisting these priests to enchant the tadpoles? Wait, what was my original point? Oh yeah, Gale. I don't have any answers, but Gale wishes, according to the Mirror of Ilan Toth, to become a Mythal in his own right, and Telamont needed one to elevate Shar to the position of the goddess of magic. Is this why Gale was required by the Cult of the Absolute? Do the Dead Three wish to use the orb for similar purposes? Maybe, but then again, maybe not. Anyway, that's the end of part 2. Part 3 will be coming sometime. I can't say soon because I'm super busy at the moment, but it will be coming. I've got a bunch of other videos planned too, and hopefully I'll get them all out before Christmas. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, then do please give me a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!